You know the culture we're in? It's all about the hustle. More hours, more emails, more meetings. It's a badge of honor. But what if that whole way of thinking is not just wrong, but is actually making us less productive? Today, we are diving deep into a really powerful idea called the productivity paradox, and why the secret to getting more done might just be to do less. Wow. This quote just gets right to the point, doesn't it? It's blunt, a little jarring even, but it hits on a feeling so many of us know deep down: burnout. You know that feeling, right? Where you're pushing harder and harder on the gas pedal, but the car feels like it's slowing down. We're going to unpack why that feeling isn't just in your head. No, it's actually the predictable result of a totally broken system. And that gets us right to the heart of this thing, the productivity paradox. It's the trap we all fall into when we start treating ourselves like we're machines. It's this massive misunderstanding of how human beings, how our creativity and our focus and our energy actually work. It's a logical fallacy that's kind of become the default setting for the modern workplace. Okay, so let's really dig into this myth of more. Why are we so convinced that more is always better, and what's the real price we pay for believing that? This is where we meet a fascinating character, the ghost at the desk.
And this right here shows you the huge mistake we're all making. We are constantly applying machine logic to our human biology. We expect our output to be linear and predictable. You put in 8 hours of work, you expect to get 8 hours of value out. But we're not machines on an assembly line. We're biological creatures. We're cyclical, we're inconsistent, and we need rest, not as some luxury, but as a critical part of the whole process.
And check this out. This is what actually happens. Economists have a name for it: the law of diminishing returns. Just look at the chart. After 6 hours, your output is really high. At 8 hours, you hit your peak. But look what happens when you push it to 10 hours. Your effectiveness doesn't just flatten out, it absolutely nosedives. You're literally putting in more time to get a worse result. And that nosedive, it has a name: the ghost at the desk. We've all been there, right? You're sitting there, you're staring at the screen, your hands are on the keyboard, but your brain has just left the building. You're going through the motions, performing the ritual of work, but there's no real productivity happening. You're physically present, but mentally, you're a ghost. Now, you're probably thinking this is some new agey, fluffy idea, right? Well, you'd be wrong. In fact, some of the best proof for this idea comes from a really surprising place, over 100 years ago, from Henry Ford. So back in the 1920s, the standard work week was 48 hours, sometimes even more. But then, in 1926, Henry Ford, a guy who was obsessed with efficiency, non-employee wellness, did something radical. He cut the work week in his factories down to 40 hours with no cut in pay. And the result? Productivity didn't just hold steady, it actually went up. He figured out that tired, overworked people make expensive mistakes. And this quote from Ford just nails it. He understood something we seem to have completely forgotten. There is a violent difference between activity and achievement. Just because you're busy doesn't mean you're getting anything done. We fill our calendars with activity, but real, meaningful achievement, that often requires less time, not more. So what Ford figured out wasn't just about business. It points to something way deeper, like the fundamental physics of rest. And this isn't about just penciling a nap into your calendar. It's about a complete and profound shift in how we think about work itself. I really want you to sit with this question for a second. We usually think of rest as the reward we get after all the hard work is finished. But what if that's totally backwards? What if rest is actually the prerequisite, the thing you have to do to make good work even possible? You know, the ancient idea of the Sabbath is a perfect example of this, and forget any stuffy, old-fashioned rules you might have heard. At its core, taking a Sabbath is a subversive act. It's a rebellion. It's pushing back against that inner slave driver that says our value is tied to our output. It's a weekly declaration that says, I am not a tool, I am a person. And when we refuse to rest, it's not just about being a hard worker. It's a behavior that the source material calls functional atheism. It's this subtle kind of arrogance, isn't it? Where we act like we, and only we, are holding the entire universe together, as if the whole thing will just collapse if we don't answer that one last email at 10 p.m. So what is actually going on in our brains when we rest? Well, there's a fantastic story that shows the hidden power of stepping away, and it introduces us to your brain's secret weapon, the back burner. So picture this guy, Dave. Dave's a developer, and he is completely, totally stuck. He has spent 3 solid weeks, we're talking 12-hour days, just grinding away at this one single coding problem. He's obsessed, he's frustrated, and he is getting absolutely nowhere. So he talks to his therapist, who gives him some advice that sounds, well, insane. The therapist tells him to just stop. Stop working. Go fishing. And this is the important part. No phone, no laptop, nothing. Just a worm and a hook. Dave thinks it's completely ridiculous, but hey, he's desperate, so he gives it a shot. And then it happens. He's just sitting on a pier, staring at the water, doing what looks like absolutely nothing productive at all, when the answer to his impossible 3-week-long problem just pops into his head, fully formed, like a lightning bolt. The solution only came when he stopped trying to find it. Dave's story is a perfect illustration of your brain's back burner. See, your conscious mind, the part that was grinding away, that's the front burner. When you give it a break, when you create that white space, you let your subconscious mind take over. It just quietly simmers on the problem in the background. Neuroscientists actually call this the default mode network. It's where your brain makes all these creative, unexpected connections. That nothing time wasn't empty. It was essential. Okay, so we get the why. We understand the problem, we see the principle, but how do we actually use this in our day-to-day lives? Let's get practical and talk about the new rules of work. Here are 3 really simple but super powerful ways to start. First, you have to kill the linear lie. Your best work is going to happen in short, intense sprints, not endless marathons. Second, respect the wall. You know that moment when your brain just switches off and you find yourself reading the same sentence over and over? That's not a signal to chug more coffee. It's a signal to stop. And third, practice limitation. It is not a sign of weakness to admit you have limits. It is a sign of wisdom. This right here, this might be the most important idea of all. We have a tendency to treat our work and even our lives like a math problem that we can solve with brute force. But it's not. It's so much more like a garden. You can't just scream at a plant to make it grow faster, right? All you can do is create the right conditions, give it some sun, some water, and some space, and then trust the process. So the final question really is for you. To embrace this paradox, you have to have a little trust. Trust that stepping away from the keyboard isn't quitting, but it's a vital part of the work itself. So, are you ready to stop forcing it and start cultivating instead?